Welcome to the DFS Build, NBA Edition. I'm Kevin Roberts with Taylor Smith. Getting ready to go over the DraftKings main slate. Nice big 9-game slate tonight. 2 more games than yesterday, so these bigger slates can be a little bit more volatile, but they're also kind of fun in the vein that like you don't really know where everybody's going, or if a lot of the ownership's going in one way, like it kind of is in some spots here, you can just go away from it and immediately get yourself different. This slate's a little bit different though, because we do not have like a Jokic or a Luka or somebody crazy up top that we absolutely have to play. You could make that case for SGA or Cade, but it just really doesn't feel like that. We'll get into it in a little bit here. If anything we say here does help you, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and come join us in Discord, get some free advice. And right now, our DraftKings core plays are free going into lock, and hopefully we can help you win. Let's get into it here. We go position by position, breaking down the best plays. Starting on point guard, we have Trae Young coming in with the best fantasy projection at 50 fantasy points, going up against the Heat. This game was a stinker the other day, but I think a big reason why is both these teams were on a back-to-back, and that is not the case here. So what is your interest level in Trae at 9.4K?
Yeah, it's pretty high. I do think, the game the other night did suck. Trae Young didn't shoot well, still had a ton of assists. He's been racking up assists lately. Minutes have been through the roof, so Atlanta hasn't fully pulled the plug yet. So for now, while he's still in the low to mid nines, I think he's a good play. Ditto for Hero, who also sucked in that last game after nuking on Sunday night. The matchup for Miami is good. He's going to have to deal with Dyson Daniels again, so it is a tough spot individually, but his usage is also through the roof. He's playing tons of minutes. Miami still, fighting for a playoff spot and all that. So I don't expect them to kind of ramp anyone down at this point. So I like both quite a bit. They are 2 of the better spends on the slate at any position. Both point guard only on DK, which makes it a bit tough, but I do like them together as a little game stack.
Yeah, like in a vacuum, Hero looks amazing. I mean, dollar for dollar, he's the better play, probably the best point guard play of the slate. I will say this, though. Dyson Daniels has played the Heat 1 time this year. The other time these teams faced off, Hero went for 54 fantasy points. And the one time he faced Daniels, he shot 4 of 19. So am I a little bit worried about Dyson Daniels? Yeah, I actually kind of am. Like, Hero is definitely capable of firing off and exploding. He can score in a lot of ways. Obviously, he can heat up from outside. It's not like Dyson Daniels always shuts everybody down. Just the other day, Cade had 75 fantasy points against them. And it's just like, big pace game. The rest of their defense isn't very good. So it's a slight concern. I mean, how worried are you about Daniels sticking to him? Because obviously the last game they played was a pretty good indicator of what the floor can be if it doesn't go the way we want it to.
I'm not too concerned. Great offensive players can still get theirs against even great defenders. So
right.
These rematch games are generally a bit lower scoring, so there is a bit of pause for that reason.
How can it get lower scoring?
I'm just saying, so
bad.
It could be another clunker possibly, but he's 8,600. I don't really mind it. We'll see if any value opens up. There is a lot of questionable stuff. Like Boston has Q tags, Toronto as well. So he might not be the priority he looks like right now. There are alternatives in this range too. Like we have Harden against the Bulls, great matchup. I like Amen Thompson again against San Antonio without any rim protection. No Wemby, of course. He's pricey, but the ceiling is there. And if his ownership is low, I think Amen's a pretty good play. Plus he's guard forward, which is useful.
Yeah, I mean, like Hero looks great, but 25% ownership and Dyson Daniels, that's enough for me if I'm entering a lot of contests to definitely consider going away from him a little bit. Like you said, there are other options. Jalen Brunson, Cat is questionable. If he's out, Jalen Brunson looks amazing at 8.9K. That would start splitting that ownership a bit. Like I would imagine people would start going to Brunson a little. So that's interesting. De'Aaron Fox, you mentioned 8.8K going up against Houston. Not a good matchup on the road, but massive usage. So I don't mind pivoting to him either. Only $200 more than Hero. Currently getting no ownership. Rightfully so. Not a good projection, not a good matchup, but the usage and ceiling is there. And I am interested in Fox today because of that. How about the really expensive studs here? Only Cade is projecting well. He's not projecting on par with Trae or Harden. And when you look at price, why not just play somebody like Hero or Brunson when they're projecting similarly? But him and SGA are kind of going completely overlooked here. Do you have any interest in them, or do you think this is just a slate where we don't need them?
I don't think you need him. Neither is in a good matchup. Brooklyn's a pretty good defensive team. Plus, the game might not be close. Like, I don't know. It's tough to pay top dollar for him. Obviously, you don't always have to play for the blowouts. You can make a case for that. And Cade seems to give the Celtics the business. And if Porzingis is out,
Right.
that's rim protection missing from the lineup again. So I think it's okay. I just think the mid range is so stacked with Giddey and Malik Monk and our old buddy Anthony Simons against the Wizards once again. And Maxey. I think Maxey's a very interesting play. Mega owned the other night without Embiid. Sucked. They got destroyed by the Bulls. Tonight they're playing the Knicks in New York. So
how do you not have any success against the Bulls? I just don't get that.
I mean, if he's going to be single-digit owned tonight, which it looks like he will be, I have no issue going right back to that. He's still only 9,300. If they keep it close, it's probably because Maxey was nuclear. So, again, I don't really see a need to pay 10.5 for Cade or 10.8 for Shea when we have all this other stuff that's cheaper.
No, I think if you're going to, Cade would be the play. 51 fantasy points per game across 3 meetings against Boston. Like you said, Boston weirdly just randomly plays down. And not like the Pistons are ass this year, like they have been in the past.
They're very good this year.
Yeah, they're
somehow.
good. But so I think people look at, Pistons, this is going to be a blowout. Not necessarily. Plus, like you said, Boston's kind of shorthanded here.
Plus
potentially
Boston
more
is
so.
on a back-to-back. And
yeah. So there's a lot actually pointing me to Cade at this ownership. I do not think he's a priority. I think there's a lot of good options to the point where like you're probably going to survive him even if he does go off. And he's probably not going to go get like 75 again on this slate. But I like him more than SGA. 2 big reasons. SGA, that game has a 17-point total, and that might be putting it lightly. Like I don't know how they don't win by 20 plus. And also the Nets play really, really slow. They're also going to be completely very, very shorthanded too. I just don't see how the game's close. I don't see how a healthy OKC team in this spot allows SGA to get there at that price. So I don't mind Cade, but I am out fully on SGA. So there's a lot of other guys to touch on here. We can't talk about everybody. I will say about Maxey, 2 things just to keep in mind. I agree with your logic 100%. If you can get a guy with monster usage with no Embiid and nobody wants to play him at a pretty palatable price still, 9.3K, he is in play for sure in tourneys. One thing that benefits him, people just like get up to play in MSG, man. It's at Madison Square Garden. It's a thing. People get up to play there. They want to drop 50. They want to be the next guy to have a massive performance there. And on the other side of it, how much of a issue is his finger? Because he shot horribly in that last game, and he was questionable going into it. So why don't you start there? Just give your thoughts on his finger and whether you think it's a problem, and then jump into your next guy that you like here in the upper mid-range.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have no way of knowing how much it's affecting him. Like he shot poorly.
Damn sure affected him last game.
So you would think imagine. It could have been that, but it could have just been an off night, and it's hard to tell. Like, checking the injury report to see if he's even on it. It says he's questionable. Is that true?
Always fun. I don't know.
I thought he was probable, but I don't know. Maybe he's questionable. We'll see. I'm not dying to play cheap Sixers, though. I guess Jared Butler would be a play again if he's out. I think Halliburton, who is also questionable with a groin, is pretty interesting in this Toronto game. He's 8,200. We've seen upside from him that we didn't see earlier in the year at all. So he's kind of come around. He and McConnell are both questionable, so we could have like a Nemhard value situation here if both sit. McConnell, if he's in, without him, looks decent as well.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think I'd be more excited about the Pacers value opening up. But then again, in a very real way, not actually, because I don't really like to play Andrew Nemhard. TJ McConnell would be the play for me, but both would definitely be viable. Josh Giddey, 7.7K. His price did not budge very much. He's had 58 plus fantasy points in each of his last 3 games. Matchup with the Clippers is suboptimal, and the Bulls don't have Vooch. So like we would have imagined last time, they probably will get housed by a better Clippers team, who's also not a fun matchup. But should we be ignoring Josh Giddey at this point? Like, he is unowned despite not being that expensive for what he's been doing lately. Like, he is just a god right now, and his projection's okay, but his projection is not getting anybody to him. What are your thoughts on Giddey?
I'll be surprised if he's as unowned as it shows now, just because people will see the game logs and the roll without Vooch and Patrick Williams and potentially Io, and they're going to see that they really can't pull the rug from under him from a minute standpoint these days. So even if he's owned, though, I think he's a pretty awesome play at 7-7. The matchup's not great, but I do like their chances of keeping it relatively competitive. The Clippers haven't exactly been tearing it up lately, so I have no issue with Giddey. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. It's just the position is so stacked that I'm curious to see. Like, Monk looks like he's kind of chalky right now in a great matchup against Utah, but is he really going to be with all these other plays that we have? Like, I could see it since he has shooting guard, but there's a ton to love here. So guys like Scotty Barnes and Halliburton and Maxey, De'Aaron Fox, and then the two guys at the top are just going to go under-owned naturally, I think.
Yeah, worth noting, Giddey had 47.5 fantasy points last time he played the Clippers. Like, Giddey does not need to have a massive shooting night to pay off, as we know. He can get you steals and blocks randomly, and he also can get you a shit ton of assists and rebounds and triple-double upside. So on DraftKings, he just looks like a really, really good play, especially at this ownership. But like you said, man, there's so much else. Like, Jordan Poole could be good against Portland. Anthony Simons is catching steam because it's only 6.7K against the Wizards. Both those guys look great in a very, very fun game environment. 233.5 total. I think the moral of the story here is paying up for point guard is going to be something we probably want to do on this slate. And I do think that is kind of like a chalky build right now, whereas like center has a lot of value. So a lot of people are going to be doing 2 value centers and then paying up at guard as much as they can. What are your thoughts there? Do you think that's something we should be getting away from, or are you just like, fuck it, it just looks too good to not do that?
I think if I get away from it, I would just want to do it to play an expensive center, because the double cheap is going to be popular with Sharp and Collins and Rashawn Holmes and Drummond and all these guys. So,
Right.
Like, there are really good pay up centers. Towns if he's in, Zubats, Şengün against a Wemby-less Spurs team, Sabonis against Utah, great spot for him. So paying up a guard is the optimal route as of now. But like we said, with Halliburton questionable and these other guys questionable, there's certainly a chance we get cheap point guards like McConnell or Nembhard available, which could kind of flip things back in the other direction. So as of now, paying up at non-center spots looks good, but it may not be necessarily the only route to take.
No, 100%. So as if we did not have enough good plays at point guard already, Scotty Barnes is also questionable. So Emmanuel Quickley is going to be popping here at 7K flat. I'm imagining you have a little bit of interest in him. With the Boston injuries, you got Derek White and Peyton Pritchard again. Like, how do you actually narrow it down to like 1 or 2 guys that you really like above the field? It's tough for sure. Is there any like other like really cheap point guard that is on your radar that we haven't discussed yet?
I think Lonzo would be. He left the last game injured, but the minutes have been up for him lately. Io's questionable. I'd feel better about this if Io sits. But Ball's minutes have been pushing 30 lately. Don't mind the spot against the Clippers. Plus, you can play him at shooting guard, which is pretty vital. So right now, he looks like the best cheap point guard. There's really not a lot else I have a lot of faith in, like Scoot Henderson, Drew Holiday, Keon Ellis, pure tournament dart throws. Lonzo is the closest thing I have to a core cheap point guard.
Yeah, and of course, as you alluded to, TJ McConnell 4K. He looks really, really good if Halliburton's out. All right, over to shooting guard we go. A lot of the same guys are going to apply here, so we'll really only touch on the ones we haven't. Jalen Green is the first one. He actually comes in with the same projection as De'Aaron Fox, so dollar for dollar, he looks like a way better play. And naturally, he's picking up a lot of ownership at 21%. He looks great against the Spurs. The Spurs give up a lot of production inside and outside. They're just not a good defense anymore. They were kind of slipping even with Wemby, and now they don't have anybody in there to, I guess, Biz can block shots. But point is, their defense is not scary. Jalen Green is on a heater. He has been really good the past 3 games, as has been the case with Jalen Green in the past. When he's hot, ride that wave, baby. And then, just hope that when you're on that wave, it doesn't go down in flames. Anyways, De'Aaron Fox is good. I don't have a problem with De'Aaron Fox. Not really optimal here. Price is pushing 9K. At shooting guard specifically, I do prefer Jalen Green. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he looks good. I do prefer the Kings, Malik Monk and Zach LaVine to Green as of now. Both have multi-positional eligibility, which kind of makes them a bit more valuable than Green, who's shooting guard only. LaVine was insanely hot in the last game. He shot 16 out of 19 against Charlotte.
Surely that's sustainable.
Utah, not a good defense either, though, so it is a good spot for these Kings. I like those guys both quite a bit. And then kind of Simons, I don't mind. Dyson Daniels, still under 7K, playing tons of minutes. Not a great matchup, but just his ability to rack up steals and blocks gives him such a high ceiling that I'm still happy to chase it. Clarkson off the injury report on the other side of that Sacramento-Utah game. No Sexton, no Markkanen, no Collins. Kessler's in, but Clarkson's going to get a ton of usage. His price came up to 6.4, so not quite the screaming value he was a couple of weeks ago in a similar spot, but still some ceiling there. RJ Barrett, I'll have interest in if Barnes is out, not so much if Barnes plays. Kelly Oubre, Quentin Grimes again. The Sixers are still without Embiid. They're without Gershon Yabusele, Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry, and Jared McCain. So if they can keep it close, Oubre and Grimes should play boatloads of minutes. Both are under 6K, and Grimes is only shooting guard. Oubre is shooting guard small forward. So don't mind them. Not core plays like they were the other night, but still a dusting of them looks pretty good.
Yeah, my lean is definitely Oubre, a little bit more versatile there. And he's not dealing with a bulky knee. So I think those two things put him up a little bit. Plus, he projects slightly better, but both are definitely in play. The other thing here, well, first of all, if we're going to live in the mid-range at shooting guard, it's Anthony Simons all day. The only issue at all with Simons is that he's chalky. If I don't care about ownership, Simons looks like a really good play at 6.7K. If we want to go down here, we can look at Nets. I mean, I don't want to play Nets at all. I actually don't. But and it's a 17-point spread. OKC has the best defense in the league. Nothing really looks good here except for the fact that these guys are not very expensive and they have a ton of dead bodies. They have so many guys out. Cam Johnson's in now, so that kind of makes them a little bit less appealing from a value and role perspective. What are your thoughts here? Are you actually entertaining playing any Nets? Right now, I am not going to do it.
I'm going to play Day'Ron Sharpe at center, but I'm not really going to get to the wings or the guards, it looks like. I just think the matchup's brutal. They have a sub 100 total. Pretty major risk of failure there, so not really into anything beyond Sharpe.
Yeah. Worth noting, Drew Holiday is indeed back in after resting yesterday, so we can't really take advantage of Peyton Pritchard necessarily, but Jaylen Brown is questionable, and they're missing some other bodies. Sam Hauser also questionable, so could we have Peyton Pritchard season again? Pretty cheap again still.
Yeah, he'd be fine. I would prefer Holiday to be out to get to Pritchard. I think Brown would help. I mean, I guess Brown being out could help Pritchard, especially if Hauser's out, but I don't think he would be a major priority. He'd be fine.
I don't know. I think if Jaylen and Hauser were out, I think Pritchard at 5.4K would be quite massive. That'd be key. And I mean, we're still looking at Porzingis, who was a late scratch yesterday, which burned a lot of people in Discord. That was not fun. If he is also out, that's just a lot more usage going out to all these other Celtics guys. And just naturally, you would imagine Pritchard would be a pretty safe bet to get 30 plus minutes.
Tough. I guess he does have shooting guard, which comes in handy. I was thinking he was point guard only.
Right.
So since point guard's so stacked, it was do I really want to play huge chalk Peyton Pritchard on a back-to-back? But since you can play him at shooting guard, I do think he's a pretty good play in that scenario.
Yeah, so also I'll point out Aaron Nesmith, 3.8K, cheap exposure to a pretty good game here. Obviously, you have the Halliburton thing. I probably would want Halliburton out to really take this dive, and I don't think it's super necessary because of McConnell and Nembhard, but 33 minutes last game. His role is increasing. He's really scoring dependent. He's got to hit his shots, but at 3.8K, he's not the worst punt. What do you think?
Yeah, he's okay. That's the kind of guy I don't want to be in on if he's chalk, but if he's not, I don't mind it. He's starting the minutes have been coming up. He's still cheap, so it is a good spot. But if he's going to be 20+% owned, just try to find something else.
Yeah, one guy I will tell you probably don't play would be Kevin Huerter. We were in on him the other day. It worked out pretty nicely, but the matchup against the Clippers is not great. They are 11th in 3-point makes allowed, not the fun 11th. They're a good defense against outside shooters. His price has come up to 4.5K. I think people, if you're box score watching, you're going to be like, oh, Kevin Huerter is cheap and he's going to have minutes and he's only 4.5K. No, I don't want to do Kevin Huerter. That's a fade for me. All right, over to small forward we go. Jason Tatum leads away with a 48-point fantasy projection, 5 fantasy points ahead of the next guy. But when you're factoring in price here, Amen Thompson looks like the way better play against the Spurs. Tatum has shredded against the Pistons, though. That is certainly worth noting. He has 53 fantasy points in the only meeting against them this year. I think I saw something where he's like averaging like 37 or 35 points per game across the last seven meetings against them or something. Whatever the case, he does well against Detroit. It's not like a super scary matchup. Projects well, and Jaylen Brown might be out. So what's your interest there?
Yeah, he looks good. Of course, I don't mind that. Still under 10K. Certainly has the ceiling to get you there on a slate without a ton of like true superstars on it. So he looks good. He'll look great if Brown is out. He'll get a huge boost. He'll probably be major chalk in that situation. But
yeah,
don't mind it. There's a lot of mid-range stuff at small forward that looks pretty good.
Yeah, starting with Amen Thompson there, like I said, you already mentioned that you like him. Point guard, small forward eligible makes him a pretty interesting piece to builds. No FDV still too. Tari Eason also out, just a tiny bit of usage, going over to everybody in particular. Amen. Matchup with the Spurs, not scary. And then you have Josh Hart, who looks really good anyways. But if Cat is out, who is questionable, he would look amazing at 7.9K. And then you already talked about Levine. You like him. Scotty Barnes is fine if he's in. And then we have Kawhi at 7.2, who I do have a lot of interest in with no norm and a matchup with the Bulls. What are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, Kawhi's probably a core play. I never feel great about it since his minute. He's just coming off an injury. Like, he's not a guarantee to play 32 to 34 minutes. They could always limit him because of his history, but the spot's so good. He's still only 7,200, so not necessarily paying full price for him. I'll be getting a lot of them. Not the most comfortable thing in the world, but I'm okay with it. And then a little bit cheaper, Avdia, revenge game against the Wizards. He's in a good spot, even without the revenge game narrative factoring in 6,500. He's going to be chalk, and this seems like the kind of thing where Avdia is so volatile that if he's major chalk, there's an argument to fade him. There is enough else at this position to like as well. Like Andrew Wiggins is going to be a fraction of Avdia's ownership in a good spot without Jovic. Bam Adebayo is questionable for Miami against Atlanta. So I think Wiggins is a good play. Even if Bam is in, he probably gets a major boost if Bam is out. And then, Paul George, I guess, is okay if you want to roll the dice on that shit again, especially if like Maxey is out. But hard to have a lot of faith in that at 7,100.
Yeah, Kawhi is a really good play. He's not a core play for me due to price. Denny is a core play for me. I would rather save $700 and go get him. I mean, revenge narrative aside, like I think that's a thing. I think the fact that they traded him and gave up on him, I think he will be motivated to come in and face them and get it done. But beyond that, just a usage increase with no Ayton, still a good price. He's been playing really well, gets good minutes in competitive games, and the Wizards are an amazing matchup, even aside from being the team that drafted him. So if you want to play Kawhi, no problem with that whatsoever. But Denny, to me, looks better. And also, it's tough to really settle in on Kawhi at 7.2 when you also have guys like Hart and Levine right above him, like not that far away. So I just think all those guys look really, really good. You can keep going too. Like obviously, if Barnes is out, RJ Barrett does look really good. All of a sudden at 7.3K, gets dicey after that. PG-13's projection sucks. Like the Knicks are not a really bad matchup, and it's Madison Square Garden, so you could talk yourself into it with no Embiid. I don't want to do it. I don't want anything to do with them. I think the only Philly guy that I actually like is probably going to be Oubre, because he basically in the competitive game he's going to push for 40 minutes. He's a good price, and he has nice positional eligibility. And I also kind of like Drummond, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So anybody else down here? Like, I mean, these projections get pretty gross in a hurry.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anybody else down that you want to save with at small forward?
There sure is. And his name is Kyle Anderson. And he's 3,400 for Miami without Nikola Jovic, who broke his hand or something the other day. He's out for a while. Mid-20s minutes in the last game. Decent per minute guy. Not going to get a ton of usage, but they're playing Atlanta, so it's a pace-up spot. You just won't find that many other plays in this range who are going to have the role that he does in this matchup. So I think Slow-Mo is one of the better punts on the slate as of now, and someone I will be getting to with an alarming amount of frequency.
Yeah, 28 minutes last game with no Jovic, so and facing the Hawks, 3.4K, all that does look really good. I don't want to bring too much negativity on him. I will say if his ownership picks up, I will be a little bit wary, but he does look good, no doubt about it. That's very cheap exposure to a really nice matchup. Bryce Sensabaugh, Jazz are still down a bunch of guys. He's only gone up $300. I think he is still in play as a decent value. Walker Kessler returning kind of curbs that a little bit, but I still think he's viable. I don't think, this position is pretty gross down low, so I'm not seeing anybody that I'm in love with here for sure. All right, moving over to power forward. We have Jason Tatum there still. Bam is questionable. If Bam is in, Bam's totally fine against the Hawks. Did not succeed in the matchup the other day, but then again, nobody did. In theory, he's still a good price, good projection, good matchup. I have no problem with him. He's not garnering ownership. If he's out, he's going to open up a lot of usage for the other Heat guys. If Hallie is out, Siakam is going to be tough to not have a core play at 7.6K. Like, he's going to have a massive role, a little bit of revenge narrative there against his former Raptors team. He's not even that expensive at 7.6. Like, even if with Hallie in, you can play him. Like, he's not a bad play right now. And if Hallie's out, he would get a significant boost. So how do you feel about Siakam? Obviously, I can't imagine you're that excited about Bam with the Q tag.
I actually do like Bam a lot, even with the Q tag, just because the matchup, like they're playing Atlanta. It's just a good spot for the Heat all around. So like, I like Hero, I like Kyle Anderson. I also like Bam Adebayo at 8.4. He always seems semi-cheap. Like, I guess it's because his ceiling is kind of elusive, but don't mind taking shots on that, especially if he's going to be lower owned than Kawhi.
By the way, if Bam is out, Kyle Anderson's going to be like 60% owned.
Yeah, and it'll be hard to get away from him because he's 3-4. And then I guess Hawkes maybe is potentially playable.
Hawkes has played like 7 minutes in each of the last 2 games.
Yeah, he's out of shape, and the coach keeps calling him out for being out of shape. But
that's hilarious.
They're running out of bodies. There is cheap stuff we haven't talked about. Buzelis is power forward only. George Niang is power forward only. Both playing pretty sizable roles. Buzelis took 17 shots in the last game. Didn't hit a lot of them, but the role's clearly there. Chicago still plays a pretty tight rotation all around. He's another guy who I think would look a bit better if Io sits. And then Niang, playing off the bench, he's had a wide range of outcomes, a wide range of minutes outcomes, but he has had ceiling. If he's hot, he's going to get the minutes, so I don't mind taking shots on that. Still only 4.3, just like he was the other night. And then I guess Jeremy Grant's probably going to get some steam at 5.4, still cheap. Hasn't been very good all season, but, it's the Wizards. Portland in general is in the best spot on the slate, so probably want to manage your exposure. Like, I don't really want all of Simons and Avdia and Grant in every single lineup, but individually for 5.4, I don't mind it at all.
There's obviously Kamara too. We didn't really touch on him. He never sounds like a sexy play, but he's been getting massive minutes in close games, and it's a great spot, and he's not very expensive. So kind of in the same breath as Jeremy and I guess Denny, like those guys all look good, but I agree. I would probably limit to like certainly max 3 Blazers. Like, they're not all going to hit, those guys kind of cut into each other. And somebody like Scoot or something could always just pop off the bench and kind of render one of them a little bit useless. I guess keep an eye on Precious Achiuwa. Right now he's not playable, but if Cat is out, perhaps he gets the spot start and he's power forward eligible. So that's nice. 6.2K. I would certainly have a lot of interest.
Since they can no longer do the annoying Jericho Sims shit.
Well, they do have that other dude who's been playing like 15 minutes off the bench, Hawk Party or something. Yeah. So they could. Okay. They've had opportunities before to play Precious, and then they played fucking Jericho Sims. So they could absolutely do that. But yeah,
40 is a pretty good per minute guy. So like, he's not like Sims, who's trash. He's
I know. I would have interest in him if he started. I'd have interest in him. He's only like 3.8K. But if Precious starts at 6.2 with no Cat, I love that. I like that a lot. So keep an eye on that for sure. Keep an eye on the whole Boston situation. If Porzingis is out, if Hauser is out, Al Horford 4.9K, not the worst value in the world, especially with a lot of the ownership.
He was like 4.2 last night. I wish he was still 4.2.
I also wish that.
4.9 seems like a lot.
It does seem like a lot. But hey, if there's no Porzingis, he's going to get 30 minutes.
I
No
think we should also mention Jabari and Dylan Brooks without Tari Eason and Van
Oh
Vliet
yeah,
obviously still
100%. How
out.
do we blip
So
over Jabari Smith?
Jabari's 5'5", not a very high floor. In fact, a very low floor, as we found out
Oh, very
last
low.
weekend once again. But should start with Eason out. Minutes should be pretty secure. I do like Brooks as leverage if Jabari is going to be owned. As of now, it doesn't look like either of them is really pulling a lot. So maybe not a thing, but on their own, I think both are okay enough.
Yeah, I don't want to do that, but I can see the merit in it. I mean, Jabari is going to get a good amount of minutes here. The Spurs are not a scary matchup. He projects okay, and like you said, not owned. I think Jabari would be my lean if I was going to play one of those guys, just because Dylan just went off last night, or I think it was last night. Did they play last night or the other day?
Last night.
Yeah, he just went off. So like betting on Dylan Brooks to crush 2 games in a row is never something I really want to do. But still, 4.9K with potentially a good amount of run and usage there. All right, over to center we go to wrap this thing up. We got Sabonis up top with a 50-point fantasy projection and not much ownership. Really nice spot against Utah. I mean, I like it a little bit less with Walker Kessler in there because he obviously can swat the shit out of everything and steal a lot of the rebounds. Utah is actually a pretty good rebounding team because of Kessler. So, Sabonis could lose out on some opportunity there, but overall, he's a little bit cheap here for the spot. He projects pretty well, and nobody's really going to be on him. That's because a lot of people are gravitating towards Zubac, who is a little bit too cheap for a Bulls matchup, and Şengün, who projects very well for his 8.5K price tag. I like Sabonis. And by the way, Cat still is only 10.1K and no Embiid. Who's going to stop Cat if he's in for Philly? So I love Sabonis and Cat here. I understand why people are in on Şengün or Zubac, but it's like if I'm paying for center, I think Sabonis and Cat is where I want to start.
Yeah, I think I would like that as well. I'm getting more Şengün as of now just because he's like 1,500 cheaper than those guys, but
right.
Still a good spot for all three. Like Şengün's playing against Biyombo, who was unemployed 2 weeks ago, and then Sandro Mamukelashvili or whatever. They don't have Bassi, they don't have Wemby. So it is a great spot. It is a back-to-back, though, which I never love for Şengün. Cheap center is the way to go, it seems. So paying up for these guys is just going to be inherently different. Maybe not if we get point guard value like we talked about, but as of now, like Sabonis unowned, Cat unowned, Şengün moderately owned, Zubac moderately owned, and Bam not owned as of now either. So paying up is just going to flip the build, and it's going to be a pretty interesting way to go because the obvious chalk is Zach Collins starting in place of Vucevic. We assume Day'Ron Sharpe will start in place of the suspended Nick Claxton. Brooklyn can always do weird shit and bring him off the bench again, but I would, even if he does, like 20 plus minutes of Sharpe at 4-2, an elite per minute guy is hard to pass up even against OKC. OKC is not a good rebounding team, so that is something you can still do. And then Richaun Holmes, we talked about a little bit. They're still without Alex Sarr, so he's going to have a role. Drummond at 4K without Yabu or Embiid. Drummond in this situation last year, were he on this team, would have been a very easy auto smash. He would have been 100% owned. He has not been nearly as productive this season with Philly. He's been banged up a little bit, playing a backup role for the most part, but 4K flat, there is nuclear upside with him. So if he's going to go under owned compared to these guys like Sharpe and Collins, Drummond looks like a pretty awesome play.
Yeah, I mean, the only real problem with Drummond, like you said, was the minutes situation and the ownership, 31% on Drummond. That feels gross. Here's the thing, though. Most of these games where Embiid was out, Yabu was there. Yabu's not there. They have him and Adam Bona?
Adem Bona.
Yeah, so whatever. Okay, so, but my point is, what's really stopping Drummond from playing like a lot more minutes than what he's projected for? So I would bet the over on his minutes here at 22 at this point, and just the upside is just so good that, and at 4K, like it's such a low risk to me. He seems like pretty good chalk. If you want to get away from it, there are other options, like you said, Day'Ron Sharpe. I mean, Sharpe between the two, he's the one I'd be more wary of. Like OKC has a good defense. This game has a massive spread. Like, what if he just struggles immediately? They get down 25, and then we don't see him in the fourth quarter. Like, he could be a total failure pretty easily. So I think they're good plays. They're good values. But by the way, in the name of getting different here, this is an interesting thing. This is why I like Sabonis and Cat so much. If you go if you go for Şengün or Zubac, both good plays, no doubt about it. But if you go for them with like getting different and like altering the build in mind, they're like the chalkiest two guys for that strategy, though, right? So that's why I like Sabonis and Cat even more. They project better. They're a little bit more expensive. Like there's a lot of things playing into them being way lower owned, and that to me is like a better way to go if you're going to try to utilize that strategy to get different. Down low, we do have Rashawn Holmes. You mentioned him earlier. He's going to start against the Blazers, 4.9K. He's in play. Khalil Ware at 6.11K. If Bam is out, he would look really good. Onyeka smashed against the Heat the other game, 5.8K. He looks good. Donovan Clingan against the Wizards, like Biggs crushed the Wiz. I think everybody's a little bit worried about Clingan because his minutes have not been amazing, but there is no Ayton. There is no Time Lord. And the Wizards give up gobs of points to big men. So I like Clingan quite a bit, especially since right now he's getting no ownership. He's only $400 more than Holmes. He is $1,000 more than the other value centers, but that's another way to kind of stay with the value center strategy, but get different at the same time. So I do like Clingan a good deal. Miles Turner, 6.1K against the Raptors. Like center is pretty loaded, man, like from top to bottom and just like different tiers here. So is there anybody else that we didn't touch on that you're like super excited to get to here?
Turner was going to be the one I brought up. I think if Porzingis is out, you can roll the dice on Keita. Played 20 minutes off the bench last night, but not a priority, but he's 3.5, so he's cheaper than most of the others we talked about. I just don't think you need to do that. These other guys are going to start and have much higher minutes ceilings and minutes floors than Keita. So not my favorite thing to do. I guess Horford's back too. It's another thing. That's probably it. Like we've kind of gone through it all. All the good centers are very obvious.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, if this ownership sticks, it's a little bit interesting that Zach Collins is coming at like 17 and both Sharp and Drummond are like double his ownership almost. That is kind of interesting. The matchup with Zoo and the Clips is not ideal, but he is basically the same price as those guys. And if he's going to be somehow overlooked, I think that is just even more reason to go get him. All right, that does it for our position by position breakdown. Let's wrap it up with our general strategy for the slate and our flag plant, if you have one.
Yeah, I think going one cheap, one expensive center is different enough. Like we talked about Sabonis and Şengün, guys like that, just being in good spots of their own. They're not going to be owned accordingly. So it's hard to fade both cheap centers since they are in such good spots and they are such good plays, but there should be enough value by the time lock rolls around. Like Boston tends to rest guys in these situations. So I do think it's viable, and that's the way I'd go. I think Miles Turner will be my flag plant against Toronto, even if Pirtle's in, like we've talked about in the past. Toronto's not a good interior defense, even with Pirtle. Turner, not really an interior guy to begin with, but 6,100 just light for him. He'll get more usage if Halliburton's out. I think there are a lot of ways for him to get there.
Yeah, I think my flag plant is going to be a real reach here. It's going to be Cat. If Cat is in, I love Cat here. Nobody on Philly can stop Towns. So 10.1K, you're paying up over guys like Zoo and Şengün, who are going to be chalkier spends at center. You're getting different, like we're talking about, by doing that center setter strategy, but not the same center setter strategy that everybody else is doing. I do think you should still use one of those slots. I still want to go center, and I still want to get one of those value centers because the odds of all those value centers not panning out is not very good. Right now, my lean is Zach Collins, but we'll talk more about that in Discord, and we'll get to our core plays before we finalize the slate. Hopefully this helps you out. If it does, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and come join us Discord for free DraftKings picks and extra advice. Thanks for watching, and good luck.